I think I forgot to put my mic. Good evening, and at this time, I would like to request yes, Commissioner Gupta, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's all stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty.
Thank you. Let me read this declaration. The oral public comments may only be provided live during the Planning Commission meeting in person. All comments provided shall be limited to 3 minutes or less at the discretion by the chair. All members of the public will be limited to 1 comment per agenda item and 1 comment for non-agenda items. Members of the public may submit written comments by email to planningdepartment@milpitas.gov. At this time, our next agenda will be the roll call. Avery.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Commissioner Kong,
Here.
Commissioner Calkins,
Here.
Commissioner Gupta,
Here.
Commissioner Awasti,
Here.
Commissioner Galang,
Okay. Here.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Present.
Chair Albana.
Present. Thank you, Avery. Our next item in the agenda would be from Attorney Creech to declare the conflict of interest.
Thank you, Chair Albana. I ask the chair and every other member of the commission whether he or she has any financial or personal conflict of interest related to any of the items on tonight's agenda.
Avery, for the vote for roll call.
Commissioner Kong,
None.
Commissioner Calkins,
None.
Commissioner Gupta,
None.
Commissioner Awasti,
None.
Commissioner Galang,
None.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
None.
Chair Albana.
None.
Let the record reflect no reported financial or personal conflicts. I further ask the chair and every other member of the commission to please disclose any campaign contributions of $100 or more received during the last 12 months from any of the parties entering into contracts with the city on tonight's agenda, or contributions received from any development project applicant or development projects on tonight's agenda.
Avery.
Commissioner Kong,
None.
Commissioner Calkins,
None.
Commissioner Gupta,
None.
Commissioner Awasti,
None.
Commissioner Galang,
None.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
None.
Chair Albana.
None.
Let the record reflect no reported conflicts. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. And for tonight, our next item would be let's approve the agenda for tonight. For this agenda today, May 22, 2004, I need a motion to approve our agenda for tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Galang.
I
Second.
second that.
Who made the second?
Deepak.
Oh, Deepak. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Can we have a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Awasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Galang,
Aye.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Albana.
Aye. Thank you. Our next item would be announcements.
Sorry, I think we need approval of the minutes.
I'm sorry, yes. We will be approving 2 minutes, one for March 27 and then April 24. We'll start with March 27. We have a motion to approve the minutes of March 27.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ong and Medina Ashby. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Awasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Galang,
Aye.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Albana.
Aye. For our next approval of the minutes of the meeting for April 24, 2024. Have a motion for approval, please.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for April 24th.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Second,
I second.
thank you, Commissioner Gupta. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Kong,
Abstain.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Awasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Golong,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Albana.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Avery. So yes, our next item would be announcements. Do any of the planning commissioner have any announcements, or planning director? Jay, if there's anything, or Attorney Creech, any announcements?
I have a couple of announcements. If our commissioners don't have any announcements.
I don't.
No, we don't.
Okay. I do want to announce that we will be hosting a housing opportunity districts open house. It's an opportunity for the community to provide additional feedback on this item, which we brought to the Planning Commission at the last meeting. So just having an open house forum where members of the community can learn more about the project, provide feedback, and we can continue to work with staff prior to going to the city council with this project. And as a way of reminder, it is a project to allow mixed-use redevelopment in the city's aging shopping centers, and the main goal is to implement the general plan and the housing element. And then one more update: the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting that was supposed to be held on June 12th will be canceled as we don't have any items for that date. So the next meeting will be June 26th. That is all.
What day is the open house forum?
It's on the 30th, which I believe is a Thursday.
Is it for the one which we approved last time? That is the one where the Lucky's was?
There are several areas, and it was recommended for approval. Recommended
That
to
is one of them? Is that one of them?
one of the areas?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. So we won't have our meeting on June 26th, confirmation, right?
We will have
June 26th?
council June 12th.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is
so June
correct.
12th, correct. June 12th.
We'll send out a formal notice relatively soon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Our next item would be our public forum. Members of the public are invited to speak on any item that does not appear on today's agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less at the chair's discretion. When called to speak, we encourage you to speak your name for the record. As an item not listed on the agenda, no action can be taken. However, the Planning Commission may instruct the staff to place the item on a future meeting agenda. May I invite members of the public here, if any? Do we have anybody online?
There's no one online who'd like to speak, and the only speaker card I have is for an item that's been agendized.
All right. So is there anybody? I see there's none. So right now, may I ask that we close the public forum and take a motion to close the public forum?
I make a motion to close the public forum.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, vote please.
Yes. Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Awasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Gallon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Albano.
Aye. With that, our next item will be our public hearing. And that will be item number 9-1 for the new multi-family housing on 1905 Taro Court. Our presenter will be Mr. Michael Fossati. Welcome. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair Albana. Good evening, Planning Commissioners, fellow staff, and residents of the City of Milpitas. My name is Michael Fossati. I'm a senior planner here with the City of Milpitas, presenting to you the project that we refer to as GeoMax 2. Next slide, please. The application is that we have for GeoMax 2 is for a number of different entitlements that include a site development permit, conditional use permit, vesting tentative map, density bonus permit, tree removal permit, and environmental assessment to allow the demolition of an approximately 35,000 square foot industrial building and the removal and replacement of 21 ordinance-sized trees in order to develop 43 townhome condominiums. With those condominiums, there'll be 13 attached accessory dwelling units, as well as the planting of approximately up to 107 new trees, all at 1905 Terrap Court. This development will consist of 13 multifamily residential buildings up to 39 feet in height, 3 stories in height, with 104 vehicle parking spots and associated site improvements on an approximately 2.3 acre site. The developer has proposed 6 below market rate units for sale, and in lieu of payment of affordable housing fund for a 0.45 unit, which allows them to invoke state density bonus law pursuant to Government Code Section 65915, also known as Senate Bill 330, also known as the Housing Crisis Act. By invoking state density bonus law and SB 330, the developer is eligible for concessions, waivers, and parking standards different from the city standards. The picture above is one of the renderings of one of the buildings that will be facing one of the interior streets within the development. Next slide, please. Here's where we see a satellite view of the property. The image of that exact location, 1905 Terrap, is outlined in yellow. The site is located along the southern edges of Milpitas, west of Terrap Court, and which will eventually connect Sango Court and Terrap Court and to make a connector street. Next slide, please. The map above demonstrates the project site's zoning designation and overlay district. The properties that are also located in the previous TASP Transit Area Specific Plan, also known as the Metro Milpitas Specific Plan area. The project is located in a multifamily high-density residential zoning district within a transit-oriented development zoning district, represented by the light tan color. The site is surrounded by R3 TOD zone properties, creating a complementary use and development style of what is being proposed. In other words, there's the project surrounded by townhomes, with the exception of Sango, or a little bit more of a high rise. Next slide, please. On February 3rd, Toll Brothers, the applicant, submitted a pre-application for the development. In order to increase transparency and certainty in development application process, SB 330, Senate Bill 330, allows a housing developer to submit a pre-application to a local agency for a housing development project. Upon submittal of that application and a payment of the permit processing fee, a housing developer is allowed to freeze the applicable fees and development standards that apply to their project while they assemble the rest of the material necessary for a full application submittal. Since the pre-application was submitted on February 3rd, the transit area specific plan, the task standards that cities used to some time ago, were in effect. Therefore, the planning department used the task development standards to analyze the project instead of using the metro development standards, which were adopted February 7th. Fortunately, the task and metro standards are very similar in kind. Once the applicant received the comments for their pre-application submittal, they applied for a formal application in July of 2023, which is the application that you are currently reviewing. Next slide, please. The project requires a site development permit to develop 43 townhome residential units ranging in size between 1,288 to 2,191 square feet. This includes 17 2- and 3-bedroom units and 26 4-bedroom units. The 4-bedroom units each have 3.5 baths. 13 attached ADUs will be included on the ground level of 13 of the 4-bedroom townhomes, which increases the density, the way the city sees it, to 25.5 dwelling units per acre. The project includes site improvements like guest parking, internal driveways to access the parking garages, as I stated before, up to 107 new trees with landscaping buffers along those public streets. Next slide, please. The staff report discussed or references this project as GeoMax 2, which is different than GeoMax 1, approved by the Planning Commission and City Council in the latter part of 2022. Here's a map demonstrating both projects connected to one another. Toll Brothers, the applicant, is developing both of those projects. One fact about this project, and it's near where the arrow or says GeoMax 2 is, you'll notice a street that's currently not there. But if this project were to be approved, Tarab Court would connect to Sango Court, creating a street connecting Trade Zone Boulevard all the way to Montague Expressway. Currently, in order to get outside of these developments, property owners need to go through Journey Street or Tarab Court on the Trade Zone. And if they're heading northbound, go to Montague. This will allow them to have 2 separate means of access. Next slide, please. The project also includes a vesting tentative map, which can only be approved via a conditional use permit for the city of Milpitas. The tentative map will allow the developer to subdivide the units into condominiums where they will be made for sale. None of the ADUs, accessory dwelling units, will become condominiums, so the owner of the townhome with the ADU will own both dwellings. Unlike fee simple ownership, condominium ownership means the owner has individual title to the inside of this unit, but all the owners will have an undivided interest in the remainder of the property, which is managed by a homeowners association. Because the subdivision is more than 5 residential units, the city council will have the final decision on the project with a recommendation of approval by yourselves, the planning commission. Next slide, please. The project also includes a density bonus permit, which is allowed for projects that incorporate affordable housing units. The city of Milpitas, via the Affordable Housing Ordinance, requires all developers to incorporate up to 15% of their total units as affordable, also known as below market rate or BMR units. The image above represents all 43 townhomes. 15% of 43 is 6.45 units. The developer has proposed to develop 6 BMR units identified as the townhomes with the red dots on them. It's a little subtle here in this image. Hopefully it's better on your screen. And for the 0.45 unit we were referring to, the applicant will need to pay an in lieu fee to the Affordable Housing Fund since a 0.45 unit can't be physically developed. Since the city has an affordable housing ordinance, which is a greater percentage of affordable housing than the state density bonus law requires, the developer is automatically granted state density bonus law privileges. Next slide, please. Density bonus law prohibits local jurisdictions from requiring a developer to meet certain objective design standards, something like setbacks, heights, or required parking spaces, as long as the applicant or developer can demonstrate that the relief of the standard equates to an actual identifiable cost reduction. This is referred to as a density bonus waiver, also known, which is separate than a concession. Since the project qualifies for density bonus permit, the development qualifies for unlimited waivers. The developer is requesting a waiver for a design standard that requires building entrances to face the public right-of-way. In order to maximize the site with dwelling units, the applicant created an internal courtyards for some of the units to face into. Since those internal courtyards are not considered public right-of-way, the design standard is not being met. This is when we do an analysis of the project. But since the project qualifies for density bonus permit, the applicant has a right to request waiving that standard because it allows them to maximize the site for residential development. The building entrance orientation provides an actual identifiable cost reduction for the project applicant and therefore is entitled to the waiver. Next slide, please. In order to demonstrate the parking requirement, staff has created a table above which shows the parking requirement per the task standards and per the state density bonus. If this project were following task standards, they'd be required to provide 126 parking spaces, mainly because task requires guest parking. State density bonus law limits parking spaces and completely removes guest parking spaces altogether. With state density bonus law, 104 parking spaces are required for the number of units they're proposing. The developer sees value in providing guest parking and proposes to develop it into the project. Therefore, the 104 vehicle parking spaces that are required by state density bonus law are being developed onto the site. Next slide, please. The project's design concept includes 3-story building heights consistent with existing and planned residential development along Tarab Court and Journey Street. The complementary design includes the following colors and materials: comp shingle shed roof design, a mixture of vertical fiber cement and stucco for the elevations, Coronado stone accents along the ground floor, metal railings for the patios and balconies, fiber cement window and door trim, and modern front entry and garage doors. The colors and materials were chosen to complement the modern day neighborhood being developed in what we refer to as the Tango area for Metro. Next slide, please. The project also includes the removal of 21 ordinance-sized trees, which will be replaced with up to 107 new trees. Additional landscape elements include a 4-foot wide concrete walkway along the perimeter of the site, internal courtyards, an outdoor bicycle rack, and stamped colored paving within the medians and parking lanes. Tree plantings include street trees that match the Tarab Court street trees, screening trees along the front of the residences, and flowering accent trees in strategically locations of the site. Next slide, please. The task requires all new developments to provide parkland or parkland fees to develop open space. The parkland fee is based upon an estimated number of persons expected to reside in the development. We use the census definitions for that data, and the estimated value of parkland for the city of Milpitas. The developer proposes 43 units, resulting in an estimated population of 107 new residents. Based on the population estimate, the applicant must provide 0.37 acres of parkland, equivalent to approximately $1.04 million. All projects in the TASP and in the Metro are required to pay what we refer to as a Transit Area Development Impact Fee, a TADIF. A portion of that fee pays for parkland. So the portion of park fee that they'll be paying into parkland through the TASP is $927,269, equivalent to 0.33 acres of parkland. The amount will be applied to the project's parkland requirement, leaving a delta of 0.04 acres to be satisfied. So in other words, they need to provide 0.04 acres of parkland or open space onto the physical site. The applicant, to satisfy this delta, the applicant has incorporated more than that, 0.29 acres as residential open space on site, as demonstrated as the green within the site plan above. The city of Milpitas also includes like patio and balcony areas as recreational area, as it's made directly for the property owner at hand. So you get credit for that also. Therefore, the applicant is receiving 13,000 square feet of balcony areas, creating that, as well as 27,000 square feet of residential open space. As such, they're meeting the parkland requirement the city requires. Next slide, please. As previously stated, some of the units will incorporate, we refer to as an attached ADU. The project includes 13 of those attached ADUs. They'll be on the ground floor of 13 of the townhomes. The ADUs range from 282 to 361 square feet and are furnished with a living, sleeping area, a bathroom, kitchenette, and a separate front door entry and porch. Next slide, please. As previously stated, the applicant will need to pay impact fees since there was previously an industrial building and we're going to be putting residential in there. There's going to be an impact to the city's infrastructure. Hence, that's why the TADIF is required. So Along with the TATA fee, we have a public art fee, a stormwater connection fee, a water connection fee, and a sewer connection fee. Next slide, please. The project was noticed a number of different ways. We noticed it in the Milpitas Post. We also placed a sign onto the property. We sent postcards up to 2,800 postcards to the area residents and landowners. And 3 comments have been received. I'm going to discuss them in the following slides. One specific comment has to do with Augustus Rathbone Park, which I'll be able to kind of share with to the Planning Commission and hopefully the residents. Next slide, please. We summarized the comments, but the comments included not enough road infrastructure improvements, keeping the existing trees that are currently on the property. Again, the residents have been asking about Augustus Rathbone Park and extending that. There's an assumption that Augustus Rathbone Park, it's been projected to be a certain size and it's decreasing in size. And we had one comment that we shared with the commissioners that someone believes there's just too much of multifamily housing out there. Next slide, please. This is just good to know. I thought I kind of took this as an opportunity to kind of share with the residents and the Planning Commission about infrastructure. To address the infrastructure comment, the city needs funds and cooperation from developers to have the infrastructure installed. By recommending approval for this project, the single court extension will be started and completed. As previously stated, this extension will connect Trade Zone Boulevard to Montague Expressway, giving residents additional options to access main corridors. This exhibit also addresses the comments regarding Augustus Rathbone Park shrinking. The park is technically not getting smaller, but it's being reconfigured into 2 areas. Augustus Rathbone Park is going to be extended into 1700 Sango Court and across the street at 1831 Terror Court. So that will also be developed into parkland. The city has already retained a park designer who will be working with our engineering and recreation teams to hold community meetings on what residents want to see in this park. The applicant will be hosting a community meeting next week where names and contact information can be collected to be given to the park consultant. Since the park development is still in its early stages, we'll have more information to come. But to address the concerns we've received, the park has not decreased in size, but rather reconfigured in a different manner. Next slide, please. There was a resident that was concerned about trees being removed. The planning department created an exhibit demonstrating the areas which are identified in those red circles of what trees are being removed. There was also an arborist report attached to this project that concluded over 43% of the trees that are currently on site are in poor condition. There are some trees that are in good and fair condition, but not allowing the removal of a tree would significantly reduce the residential development ability. Unfortunately, there's a necessity to remove these trees for the economic enjoyment of the property since there is no feasible alternative to remove them. Furthermore, the majority of trees that will be removed are along the western property line where utilities will be developed on the site. And lastly, those 21 trees that are ordinance size that will be replaced with up to 107 new trees eventually when this project is complete. Last slide, please. The last comment has to do with too many multifamily residential units. The California Department of Housing and Community Development, also known as HCD, we're good friends with them, have created policies in response to the state of California's current housing challenges. The following policies in this slide demonstrate there's a need for new housing all across the state of California. Laws have become difficult to stop housing development across the state. So rather than stopping development, cities formulate plans with the help of our city council and planning commissioners to place an importance on quality of life while being as inclusive as possible. More housing opportunities provide more choices and opportunities for ownership. Therefore, if someone believes that there's too much multifamily housing, there's significant policy and laws, and cities are required to kind of create that housing when appropriate locations are identified. And this leads into the next slide. Next slide, please. So when these projects are reviewed by the Planning Commission and the Planning Department, we have findings that either we can recommend approval for or recommend denial for to determine if the project is consistent with the findings and the beliefs and the policies of the city of Milpitas. The GeoMax 2 development has been carefully analyzed against state law, the Milpitas General Plan and the Task Metro Specific Plan, as well as the zoning ordinance, which includes findings that include a compatible design with neighboring projects, consistency with the goals and policies of the Milpitas zoning ordinance, Milpitas General Plan, and Milpitas Transit Area Specific Plan. For components of the project that are not consistent with the zoning ordinance, the building entrances, that has been rectified by allowing waivers per state density bonus law. Lastly, the project meets the conditions of Government Code Section 66474 regarding subdivision law and the Subdivision Map Act. Next slide, please. The project is considered exempt per SEQA, as demonstrated above, along with Exhibit 2, which you'll find in your packet, which documents how the SEQA exemption can be found. There's an additional exemption, Section 15183, which demonstrates the project is consistent with the community plan, general plan, and zoning plan of the city of Milpitas. Next slide, please. In closing, staff recommends the Planning Commission open the public hearing to receive comments, move to close the public hearing, consider the exemptions in accordance with SEQA, and adopt resolution number 23-021, recommending a City Council approve the site development conditional use permits, the vesting tentative map, the density bonus, tree removal permit, and the environmental assessment. This concludes staff's summary of the project. I'd also like to introduce Nick Kosla, the Land Entitlement Director of Toll Brothers, to answer any questions associated with the development. If there's questions I can't answer. This is the summary of my project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. That was a lot.
Yeah, I know. And I commend you for keeping your eyes open when I chat.
I know they gave us the packet. It was like 500 to 600 pages. Anyway, any comments or questions for planner? Michael, go ahead. Commissioner Gallo? Question?
Yeah, your mic's on.
Okay, good.
Yes. Do you want to?
Yeah, I had a question about like the tree removal and stuff. In that regard, is there any plans to like try to transplant the good trees somewhere else in the city, or is it just to destroy them?
I'd rather say not destroy, but what we do is, so the short answer is no. There's no plan to remove those trees. The city has an ordinance so if it were a heritage tree, if we recognize it as a heritage tree, that would probably be in the works, something to move and relocate. We don't take tree removal lightly. What we do is require arborist reports demonstrating the health of those trees. You may notice in some of the plans that this is a very highly industrial area. These trees are astute. They're relatively tall, but the health of all of them, outside of being good and fair, were mainly poor. So I just want to kind of share that with you. But there's no way, they're not going to relocate the tree. The city requires, and one thing, what the city does require is if someone requests to remove a tree through a tree removal permit, you're required to plant 2 trees of commensurate size that will eventually grow to commensurate size. And they have 107.
Commissioner Gallo?
Yeah. Regarding about the trees, you said how many percent that you're going to remove? The old trees are going to remove the entire old trees in the area?
Yes, there's 35 trees total on the site.
Mhm.
It's mainly the industrial building and parking area, but there's 35. Of those 35 trees, 21 of them are ordinance sized.
What do you mean by that?
That means that they require, you need a permit to remove those trees.
So what type of trees are you going to replace?
What type of trees are going to be replaced or removed?
Replace.
I believe number of ash trees. This I don't have the exact number or exact type of trees. It's in your project plans, and exhibit 3, I believe, of the landscape plan. But the city has a street tree list of over, I would say 50 trees. And I believe cypress may be one of them, ash may be another. I don't have the exact number or name of exactly every tree, but they are going to be city required street trees.
Yeah, when it comes to parking, you said that you should not allow guest parking, correct? There,
What I stated is that state density bonus law,
yeah.
because if an applicant proposes to build affordable housing, they're not required to build guest parking if they meet certain requirements.
Do you have a
But
parking on the street? Do you have any available space?
the project is still, even though that's not required,
Mm.
the applicant is still putting guest parking onto the site. The new street that's going to be proposed along the northern end, that will have also street parking too.
And then I know you combine townhomes and condominiums. It's the first time I heard, right? Townhomes, condominium. What's it make a difference than either townhomes or condominium? You said townhomes, condominium, right?
Yeah, correct.
What's the difference? But why you combine these two, condominium and townhome?
Because there's 2 different types of condominiums. Physically, there's flats where you may go to someone like an apartment building, and there's a first floor, second floor, third floor, and each unit, almost apartment, is a condominium. There's a townhome development where, in this project specifically, the whole townhome is a condominium. They're both the same because you own the interior. So just by reference, they're both the same, but someone that's not in real estate may not know that. At the end of the day, all they do is whoever purchases the property only owns the inside of the unit that they're getting the purchase.
Here, 8 of the 4 bedrooms units will have ground floor. This is the ADU, right? 8.
Accessory dwelling unit? Mhm.
Yeah. Did you attach the townhome?
Yes, so these are 3-story townhomes. It shows it pretty well in the staff report or in the plans. The bottom floor is a garage, and a portion of that bottom floor is the studio unit. And so that'll be attached, and then you start going to the second and third floor.
And what's a GEO3 and GEO2? What is that? There's a GEU. Go back. What I mean, there's
I don't know, could you share what?
GE. GEO1, GEO2.
Avery, do you think you can go back to? There we go.
Separate project.
Thank you,
right?
Vice Chair. Dean
Geomax,
Ashby.
yeah.
Geomax 1 and Geomax 2. In order to kind of create some labels for the projects,
Mhm.
Geomax 1 is a project both you and your counterparts had approved and recommended approval in November of 2022. That was 73 townhomes. That's currently recognized under the red lining. Geomax 2 is the project that's in front of you today. It's 43 townhomes.
Uh, Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other comments, Commissioner Kong, please?
Thank you. So Michael, I have a few questions. The first one is surrounding the units with ADA access. It's kind of new to me to see that there are designated units that is designated for ADA. Wouldn't the whole project be ADA compliant rather than just dedicated 5 units?
Oh, that's a great question, Commissioner Kong. I wish building was here. I think I can kind of answer it for you. With a for sale component, a for sale project, there's some ADA requirements needed, but not every unit needs to be ADA accessible.
So when you say that not every unit need to be ADA accessible, these are special accommodations like in the bathroom and entryway and so on, including how about stairs access? Because these are 3-story units. Are there special accommodations just for,
For
moving?
ADA
Yeah.
people? Yeah, I'd probably have to get back to you on that. I'm just thinking off the top of my head when you say accommodation as like if it's a stairwell and is there a riser that
Yeah.
takes it up? I couldn't answer. I think the answer is no to that, but I don't think that's a requirement either. I believe that, and I kind of don't want to speak to this out of term not being a building official, but I think it has to do with more of access ways of ability to get to a restroom, just turn around pass for wheelchairs.
But at least this is, referring to the interior of the units, right? The rest of the property, as far as exterior, everything should be ADA accessible, correct?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Right.
So
Thank
definitely.
you. I have a few follow-up questions. So regarding the parking, you mentioned that with the new access road through Sango Court, there will be street parking available, correct?
The plan is to have, and I'm so glad we have this image up, where you see the Geomax 2 arrow, it's pointing to the project, but it's also pointing to Sango Court, I believe. I can't see it from here. The city in our what we call our sections for Metro, we plan on having one side of the street for parking. The reason why this is important to kind of understand is if we created two sides of the street for parking, then you get less park. Right? So my understanding, it has not been completely designed yet, Sango, but in our reference material, which is the Metro plan, one of the sides will be available for parking.
All right, thank you. And then another question is regarding the BMR units. You said there will be 6 units allocated. And I was looking at the report. It says that the breakdown is going to be one that is 2-bedroom, one that is 3-bedroom, and then the remaining 3 units would be 4-bedroom townhouse, and one is 4-bedroom with ADU. So, I'm just curious, who comes up with this allocation? Because it seems to be allocating towards the larger size units. It's like almost 4 out of the 6 units are 3 or more bedrooms.
Sure. So the condition or in the affordable housing ordinance asks for an appropriate mix commensurate to what's being developed. So those were the units that were identified. Sometimes there's a discussion between the housing department and the developer during the building phase about what additional or what different type of unit is being proposed. But this is the one that was proposed by Toll Brothers.
And then what's going to be the procedure to, it's going to be for sale, I suspect, right? This is our units that's going to be owned. So if it's going to be put up for sale as BMR units, are there going to be similar process as how we handle the rental unit allocation, whereby there is going to be a list that people can get onto to be informed and
see if they
have a chance?
qualify.
Yeah.
Yes, the housing department, they run that program. Typically when they're in construction, trying to get construction phase, the applicant meets with their housing department to finalize an agreement on how they will be allocated, how they'll be sold, just a due diligence concept. And then once the housing department identifies them, they're ready for purchase. Then the housing department works with the developer, which essentially sells those units. Once that sale does happen, they can't close the sale until the housing department's made aware with the agreements or everything signed that makes that unit affordable.
And are there going to be priority system? Like I know I've heard at least some of the projects that we have this planning commission and city council has approved in the past. We're giving priority to certain service positions such as teachers and so on. Is there going to be something similar for this project?
No. And a part, so no, yeah, that there won't be priority. It'll just, if you qualify for a lower income status, you'd be able to purchase.
And then the last question I have is regarding the waiver for street facing. When I was looking through the map, it looks like towards the lower side of this map, it's all facing the park.
The future park, yes.
Yeah. And what's going to be in front of it? Is it just direct access to the park, or is that going to be pedestrian pathway, or is that going to be fencing? What is the plan separation between the development and the park?
Yeah, one, you're right, you can see it right here. There'd be an ADA accessible pathway along that area, and I believe it'll be a fenced. One thing that you wouldn't see, this is a two-dimensional photo. And one thing we don't talk about, and Commissioner Khan, you spoke to something, these units are going to be much taller than the park. The reason being is this is in a flood zone area, and the city doesn't allow a developer to build a house that could potentially be impacted by flood. You raise the grade up. And so what you will find out is it'll be just a fence along with a pathway that's probably going to be raised 4 feet above the existing park, the proposed park, the new future park.
Okay, so there's already a natural separation built in just because of the
Just the
level
land.
difference.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And so
all
there's
right.
a retaining wall that'll be associated with that.
Okay, but at least the front door will be still feel open, right? They look out to the park.
Probably, yeah, it's a feature probably by the developer they want to keep. So yes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
I have a few questions.
Commissioner Gupta.
So these affordable housing units, are they any different in terms of construction or anything? They're a different price, right?
Sure. So just to make sure I heard the question, and I may rephrase it a little bit, are the market rate units and affordable units built maybe differently with different type of construction materials? Is that kind of what you said?
Is that true? I mean, they're made of
No, not at all.
Okay.
They're all need to be built as identical.
Oh, okay.
If you use sheetrock of a certain material on the market rate, you need to use that same sheetrock, same paint, same fixtures.
So they're about 20% cheaper, or what's the difference typically?
I couldn't speak. It's less about the overall cost. I think it has more to do with a calculation associated with if you qualify for modern or below market rate. They're moderate income units. So the cost is associated with how much money you make, and then they take a certain percentage of that creates how much the unit's going to cost. I couldn't give you what the number is going to be because it's commensurate on who the buyer is going to be. So if you qualify with your income level to be a moderate rate income earner, they take a certain percentage of that and they calculate that of what 35% is. And then that's what the unit's marked as. And so the twist is you couldn't be someone that buys it at market rate or buys it at below market rate and sell it for market rate. There's an agreement in this. Here in the resolution for 55 years, if you were to sell it, you have to go through the same process.
Planning Director Jay would like to say something, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and these are all great questions. Definitely after the meeting, we could maybe share some resources that our housing team has on the website with some of the details about our programs. So we can definitely do that. It's just that it's administered by a different department.
Yeah.
So we may not have all the answers, but we can definitely share the resources.
Okay. Coming to the next question. I happen to be, I own one of the Toll Brothers condos in Fremont. So I have direct experience.
Yes, you do.
So my question is, I know the complex I'm talking about is Metro Crossing in Fremont. And it has all kinds of problems in terms of construction issues, quality issues. So I was wondering if this complex will have similar issues, or those issues have been addressed. Does the Toll Brother representative know the issues that are being faced by Metro Crossing in Fremont, which is a huge luxury complex of, I don't know, 800 units. A huge complex, and the elevators don't work, and there are all kinds of issues. So that's the question. Maybe you can answer it.
Should I reach out to the applicant? Toll Brothers representative. I can't answer that question, Commissioner Gupta, which I think you understand, but
But as part of your approval process, do you put conditions of approval in terms of certain levels of quality and inspection and all those things, right?
right, what I can answer to is the quality of our building department and the ability to inspect each unit wholeheartedly to comply with building permit code. I can speak of the quality of that, but things falling apart in Fremont, I just can't speak at.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Okay.
Commissioner. If I may go to if you can remind me or some of those who are here. So we have a maximum, how many units for the GeoMax set 2?
How many
Units.
townhomes or?
Townhomes, yes.
Yeah,
Everything, including the
43,
ADU.
including ADU 56.
56. For a population of how many? 107, I think. I think I heard it.
Right, but the 107 was based on the 43 townhomes.
Okay, correct. Now, how about the GeoMax one? Remind us.
How many
What would be
residents are?
how many units?
There's 73.
73. So with that, I just wanted to know how you had managed the traffic, the flow. Maybe we should ask who is in charge of the traffic flow, the impact it has.
Sure. I know for a fact that not every person has a car because there's children involved in that kind of population, but the TASP and the Metro contemplated the number of units they're proposing, not Toll Brothers, but any developer, 25, 30, 40 units per acre. And they contemplated how the street sections would allow traffic to flow. If your question is how is it going to impact traffic level of service, I can't answer that. I don't believe there's an engineer here to answer that.
No, but I'm sure the staff had studied all of that. It will just be the concern within the flow here. Of course, we are encouraging people, to use other means. Correct.
Hence the transit area specific plan. It's
transit areas,
transit
yes,
area.
yes.
It's less than a quarter of a mile. Well, definitely a half a mile from the BART station and the VTA station.
Yes. So any other questions from the commissioner? Commissioner Awas.
Yeah, I see that we could build technically not possible to build 0.4 BMR units, and some money will be given to the city. Is it possible that instead of 6.4, like the calculation came up, they could build, we're not asking for too much, but at least 7 units. A family can use those units for a long, long time of 55 years or whatever it is. So my request to Toll Brothers will be, and that if they can incorporate another unit in lieu of the money they give, and a family can use that for a long time. So that is my request. Thank you.
I will speak to the city code, the affordable housing ordinance. When a project comes in and it's less than the 0.5, they have the option of paying the in lieu fee. I'm not advocating for the applicant. I know GeoMax 1, the point was over the 0.5, which they have the option of paying, but what they did is they provided another unit. If the chair is okay, I could invite the Toll Brothers representative to discuss any of those conditions.
Yes, of course. Good evening.
Can you hear me okay? Great. Chair Obana, Vice Chair Medina Ashby, and members of the commission. My name is Nick Koss with Toll Brothers. I'm joined by Rob Connolly, an associate of ours. You can't see him, but we've got our whole design team. So our landscape architect, civil engineer, they're in Zoom land somewhere. So if there's any direct questions for them, they'd be happy to answer. I think, we've had a great relationship with the city for a number of years. Our old predecessor, Chappelle Homes, is actually headquartered here. Our Toll Brothers headquarter is located in Pleasanton, California, which is about 20 minutes from here without traffic, with traffic a lot longer than that. But we were fortunate tonight. So, as far as the project goes, we built the original Parkside project. I think we acquired it probably about 10 years ago. And then Geomax 1, which was approved and they're doing grading work right now. So we're hoping to get improvements and open for sale in 2 months on that one, hopefully July. And then kind of the final, I'd say, hole in the donut, and we worked with Ned Thomas on most of these, is the project that's before you tonight, the Geomax 2, which is certainly the smallest of all the projects. It took a long time to work. I mean, you see what's happening tonight. There's years and years of struggle, for lack of a better word, trying to just acquire this land and then also meet the vision of the city. And we were under a lot of, I'm not going to say pressure, but working with Ned Thomas and also there's another planner at the time. How can we get as much density on the site as possible to create more vibrancy, more residents here, also get more fees, pay for the parks, pay for the future overcrossing, the pedestrian overcrossing, and also the street segment. So the thing that actually your city staff came up with that we designed was this concept of having that accessory dwelling unit as part of the townhouse unit, which had never been done in the Bay Area. And it cost us a whole lot of money and a lot of brain damage, but we figured out a way because there's, I always look at people in my office. Housing, to your point about affordability, and inclusionary housing is a way to help solve affordable housing. I think there's a lot of other ways to help solve that. And with these ADUs, what we figured out is I'm just giving round numbers here. So if you're buying a unit for $1 million, that ADU is its own address, its own front door. If you can go in and buy one of these units that has the ADU in it, now instead of you just having $1 million, which is a lot of money to earn, you could buy that house knowing that you're going to get the rental income of the ADU. So now you're getting someone in the primary house, that townhouse, that really is just in theory paying like $800,000, $750,000 for the house. And the ADU can subsidize them. And they also get a lower income person in there who wants a rental apartment. So we're creating, I think instead of just thinking this as being, it's either inclusionary and that's the only affordable we're doing, we've actually created a big mix of product also from the size of our units, from 1,200 square feet up to 2,200. So we tried to fit essentially 4 different levels of affordability. And there's the different sizes that creates affordable levels. People can afford the smaller units. There's the ADU component. There's also the person who's going to buy the main unit that they're going to get a more affordable product because they can rent out the ADU. And there's the inclusionary. And so we put a lot of time into thinking of this more outside the box than just, I want the fee of the 0.4, or, that part of it, which I think is important, which we're certainly willing to pay. But this whole concept of affordability. When we started with Geomax 1, we haven't actually built one of these yet. So we're really hoping it all works, but we think it will. And now we're bringing it into Geomax 2. So that was the concept of affordability on this site. If there's any other questions, I'm certainly here to answer them. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, you brought up a very interesting point. You mentioned that the ADU is going to get a separate address. And one of your that kind of designated 6 BMR unit is a townhouse that comes with the ADU. Can it be deeded to 2 separate owners? That way we can increase the number of people who can actually get into this property rather than just deed as one.
So I agree with you. So in addition to the years and years it takes for us to get to this moment, for us to actually build these units takes another several years of going through all your various departments, working on the circulation for transportation, working on the building department, all that stuff. Your housing department was the one who had recommended, they tell us. So however they want us to handle which units are inclusionary, we propose something and then they just say either yes or no. Typically they say no, and they'll figure out exactly what unit type they want. So we had the same concern you did. Someone's getting a unit for, in some cases, 100% cheaper than your neighbor, which is just the way the way it works. And then that person might have the opportunity to then rent out the bottom unit also. I think it's great that your housing department can deal with that headache because I don't know what the answer is, but they were pretty adamant about creating a solution to this that you'll see in Geomax 1. So there'll be a year for us to finalize the affordable housing agreement. If you have good ideas about how to handle it, let us know because we don't totally have a grasp on it either.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe Jay, you can help us with that.
Well, and just a comment about the ADU unit possibly being for sale. We don't currently allow that right now, but there's recent state law that gives cities the option to allow for the sale of ADUs. We haven't adopted an ordinance yet to do that. So just to explain why we haven't pursued that route yet, because until very recently, that was not allowed. So
And just to clarify that point, if I may, Chair, state law only allows sale of ADUs under certain very specified conditions. The city allows the sale under those same conditions. Those conditions don't necessarily apply here. So that's the currently adopted law in the city as well as the state.
And there's a lot of movement in the ADU world, just as far as even getting mortgages. Like you used to a couple of years ago, you couldn't, for a detached ADU, you couldn't assume mortgage income from the ADU or, income from the ADU to subsidize your mortgage. That's changed, at least for detached. And that's the direction we see it going for attached. I think this is honestly, and this is super clever of Ned and your staff. Like now other cities we propose this in, it's very well received. And it started right here in Milpitas. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for the innovation.
Of course. Thank you.
That was good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Coming to that, my request was, is it possible to work and get another unit, or you're going to stick to the 0.4 and pay the money? It was 6.5 or 6.6. It's a very minor difference.
Minor to you, but not minor. There's a lot of other parties involved with this project right now. So knowing that that would be your preference going forward, even though we don't have another project right now that's coming before the commission, but we'll keep that in mind for the next time.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Planning Director? Any other questions? Right, maybe I'll have to open this now to the public.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate your
Hearing.
time.
Yes,
I'll just
thank
be
you
here.
so much. I understand there is somebody who's going to have any comments on the agendized item. Do we have?
Yes, Commissioner, we have Nick Coleslaw. Did you nothing further to say? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. So this time I can- At this time, I will need a motion to close the public hearing. Any motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Kong, and
I second.
second by Commissioner Medina Aspi. Vote, please.
Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Awasti,
Aye.
Mr. Glong,
Aye.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Albana.
Aye. Thank you, Avery. At this time, do we have any other comments among ourselves or?
I do have a comment. So I'm just still a little bit not sure how the affordable housing unit is going to be, allocated by the housing department. Is there a way for us to understand why certain project was able to, designate a certain percentage, like for example, for the teachers and public service employees? Well, this project, we understood that we cannot do any of that.
Planning Director?
So our affordable housing ordinance would not allow us to give preference for certain groups. So that's why our standard practice is not to try to give any preference for a specific group. I believe for another project, those could be agreements or discussions held by developer and other private entities, but it wasn't something that we put as a condition of approval requiring anything, to be set aside for certain groups. So that's why we didn't include a condition of approval for any kind of preference.
Planner Michael?
And if I may, through the chair, to the
Yes.
planning director, I believe you're referring to the project 1355 California Circle.
Yeah, California Circle, and then there was one on like North Park, Victoria. There's like a single family project that they actually allocated units for teachers. I remember that. And then California Circle also.
So I can only speak at the California Circle project. This site is designated for residential. So anyone can come in and propose residential units and they meet our standards. California Circle was zoned industrial. So the applicant, my understanding is that in order for the city to consider converting to residential, they proposed to do more affordable housing than the 15%. So the rule had to be changed. And on top of that, they said, we're going to, and this is still kind of up for debate, are going to preference those units to teachers. Our code doesn't require preferential treatment, especially when what they're proposing, the applicant is proposing what we allow residential. That one had a different study. I just kind of want to make sure that that was clear.
Yeah, I think now it's clear. It's part of the negotiation to get it converted, right?
Correct, right. So
Got it.
I just want to make sure we're clear.
And if I may clarify from a legal perspective, what was coming for that particular one, the California project, there's a request for certain kinds of exemptions or variations from the Affordable Housing Ordinance and an application to the City Council's discretion in that regard, and proposals for additional alternative ways in which the proposal could meet in greater ways the objectives of the Affordable Housing Ordinance, as well as the public health, safety, and welfare of the community in general. So that particular project, because it was seeking those exemptions, was giving different kinds of voluntary things that are not normally contemplated by the ordinance. The ordinance is generally applicable and is neutral to all residents and treats everyone equally.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Attorney Creech. Well, project to me, I'd like to make a comment here. The project to me, I see meets all the 4 levels of affordability. And what's great about this is the concept of the ADUs. I think it's a first, right? It's a first. And it increases our housing need. So at this time, maybe I would ask if we can have a motion to approve this resolution.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. You have to read it, please.
To read.
They're putting it here so we could.
Adopt resolution number 23-021, recommending the city council approve a site development conditional use permit, vesting tentative map, density bonus permit, tree removal permit, and environmental assessment subject to the findings and conditions of approval.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Awasti.
No.
Oh,
Michael.
Hawkins. Thank you. Vote, please.
Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Wasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Galong,
Aye.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Albana.
Aye. Thank you, Avery. So our next item would be 9-2, the general plan amendment will be presented by our project manager, Holly Pearson. Good evening, Holly.
Good evening. I apologize for the delay there. Good evening, commissioners. Nice to be with you this evening. I am the city's project manager for the Comprehensive Zoning Update Project. And for the presentation on this item, I'd like to introduce our consultant team, Lisa Wise Consulting, and Jennifer Murillo will give the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Thank you very much for having us. I believe Avery has our slide deck that he will pull up. But again, I'm Jen Murillo with Lisa Wise Consulting, or LWC. I'll be running through the presentation this evening. And This presentation, I'll be focusing on providing an overview of the project and speaking to the outreach we've conducted. Avery, you could go to the next slide, please. And then I'll walk through each of the items related to the action tonight. I'll speak to the general plan amendment, the new zoning districts, the zoning map update, the environmental review or CEQA, and then I'll wrap up speaking specifically to focused outreach that was conducted related to the BPRD or Business Park Research and Development Zone, and close with a recommendation. Next. So first, just talk about general overview of the project and the outreach we've conducted. Next. So this project, the zoning ordinance update, is a two-phase project. What is before you tonight is phase one of this project. Phase one encompasses the preparation of new zones that implement the city's general plan update that was adopted in 2021 and the metro specific plan that was adopted last year. This also includes, with those new zones being proposed, we also need to update the city's zoning map to ensure that those new zones are mapped appropriately. And then this phase one effort also includes the necessary zoning ordinance and general plan amendments to ensure the legally mandated consistency between those two documents. Phase two is the comprehensive zoning ordinance update. So that's the full rewrite and update and reorganization of the zoning ordinance. That is a longer effort, and we will pull in what's adopted with this phase one work and integrate that into the new zoning ordinance structure we develop in this second phase. Next. The overall project for the zoning ordinance update is about a 2.5-year project. We kicked off this project about a year ago. We started off with a background review and research effort, and then we've been focused in phase one. Again, what is before you tonight with the new zoning districts and the zoning map update. For the full comprehensive update, we expect that will be complete in summer of 2025. And as has occurred thus far and will occur throughout this project, we will have various opportunities for public engagement, input, and feedback. Next. The outreach that we've been going through over the last year includes a variety of meetings. We've held meetings with the Technical Advisory Committee that includes key city staff and departments. We've held interviews with stakeholders. We've had 3 meetings with the Zoning Advisory Group. That was a group that was established through council, has representatives of various commissions on that group. We've also held a community workshop and study sessions. We held a study session with the Planning Commission last fall. We held a study session with City Council in October, and also held a meeting with the Economic Development and Trade Commission. All the information and materials that were provided for these meetings, all of that is available on the project website. It's milpitaszoningupdate.org. And on that website also includes all of the project information, as well as an email sign up for anyone who's not already signed up. You can sign up there and stay informed for the next phase going forward. Next slide, please. So first, I'd like to touch on the general plan amendment portion of this item. Next slide. And these amendments are really minor. Again, state law requires that the general plan and zoning be consistent. And so we're focused here on those necessary adjustments to the general plan to ensure that the zoning amendments we're proposing all line up and are consistent. So we have two pieces of the zoning or general plan amendment. The first being amending the land use map from the general plan. And those are amending the general plan designation for certain parcels to reflect current site conditions and or the existing zoning and built developments. Then also amending the land use element of the general plan in a few respects, again, to ensure that consistency with zoning. One amendment is to amend the density ranges for the low density residential and medium density residential designations to align with the implementing zones. Specifically, this is ensuring that we retain or maintain the current densities allowed in the city's R1 zones. So it's just making the amendment in the general plan. They're minor adjustments just to be consistent with your current R1 zoning. We also have a change to remove the word small in a descriptor for the business park and research development designation, the BPRD area. The BPRD area has a description in the general plan that includes small warehouses. And I'll get into feedback we've had in discussions with the public about BPRD. But based on that extensive conversation, we've arrived at the conclusion that making the amendment to the general plan to drop the descriptor of small will be consistent with where we're going with the new BPRD zone. I will say for that in your packet with the zoning amendments, that word small has stayed within the zoning text amendments. We will remove that for consistency as we bring this packet forward to council, and we'll address any other minor typos or anything we need to cover. Lastly, for the general plan amendment, it includes removing the neighborhood commercial or C1 zone as an implementing zone for general commercial. This again is to maintain that consistency with zoning in terms of the neighborhood commercial zone will get an increase, a bump in the FAR to be consistent with the general plan. And with that increase, it will no longer be consistent with the general commercial designation. So it'll see that increase in the FAR and just needs to be dropped from an implementing zone for a designation that has a lower FAR. So again, this sounds like a lot of detail. These are just minor nuances to ensure that legally required consistency between the general plan and zoning. Next. So now getting into those new zoning districts, again, to implement the general plan and metro specific plan. Next. So in addition to creating the zones themselves in the zoning ordinance, we have to make amendments to other sections of the zoning ordinance to make sure that our revisions are comprehensive and complete. So in addition to establishing the zones in those sections of the zoning ordinance, we also are proposing revisions related in the definitions, largely for adding uses in the parking regulations, in non-conforming. And then we also have a housing element sites provision that we're adding. That is actually related to the housing element, an element of your general plan that was adopted and certified last year. And as you may recall, the housing element has specific timelines for programs within the housing element. So we're folding in some language that's coming out of the housing element just to include it in this packet for approval for timeline and compliance with those housing element programs. Next slide. First, I'll start with the BPRD, Business Park Research Development Zone. And so this area is located the southwest area of the city, referred to as the Southwest Employment Area, south of 237, west of 880. This area is intended to be an employment area focused on high tech and integrating R&D, advanced manufacturing, office, and warehouse uses. Next slide. With this new zone, not surprisingly, some of the key allowed uses we've included are advanced manufacturing, R&D, data centers, warehousing and distribution. In the warehousing and distribution allowance, and I will also speak to this later, is that we do have a caveat in terms of how warehousing and distribution is proposed to be allowed, in that it is proposed to be allowed if the warehouse facility is 150,000 square feet or less. Other warehousing facilities that are larger than that may be allowed, but subject to a conditional use permit. Key development standards in this new zone include a minimum lot size of 25,000 square feet, maximum building height of 80 feet or 5 stories, and then a floor area ratio with a minimum building intensity of 0.35 going up to 2.5. Next. And then to be consistent with the way the general plan describes and envisions this area of the city, we have included special design standards that includes specific provisions related to the buildings themselves as well as to the sites. So looking at standards for building entrances and the articulation and facade of buildings, also including standards for pedestrian and bicycle circulation, some specific provisions for projects that are larger than 80,000 square feet related to things like common area and landscaping. Then we also have landscaping standards, parking and loading, and lighting. Next slide. Then moving on to the metro area zones. These zones are focused around the BART station, transit center, Great Mall. So here we're focused on a high density mix of uses in this transit and pedestrian oriented setting. The metro specific plan outlines a lot of guidance and even standards for this area. And so we're really reflecting what's in the policy document of the specific plan now into the zoning code. And that means there are 7 new zones that are proposed for the metro area, ranging from high density residential to mixed use, and then the metro version, actually 2 metro versions for BPRD. Next slide. So again, the metro specific plan does include a lot of these standards that are reflected in the zoning ordinance or proposed here. That includes density and floor area ratio standards, standards for setbacks, for building height and open space. There are also standards related to the articulation of buildings and pedestrian and bicycle circulation. Then I want to mention in terms of parking requirements, the specific plan identified that there would be no minimum parking spaces required in the metro area. So in terms of the number of parking spaces required, there's no minimum required, and there is a maximum number of parking spaces that can be established. So very forward thinking in terms of being transit oriented and supporting transit. There's also parking design standards proposed that reflect the, again, focus on transit, less auto-oriented, walkability, bikeability of this area. And then lastly, I want to note the proposed metro zones do have a reference to the objective design standards. These design standards the city adopted in just less than 2 years ago. So multifamily and mixed use projects that come forward in the metro area would be subject to those objective design standards. So those objective design standards would supplement the standards we are proposing in these zones. Next. Okay, so then we've got draft zones in terms of their standards and descriptions. So now we have to talk about where they go in the city. So we have the zoning map update next. Next slide, thank you. And so in terms of our approach here, again, it's a consistency exercise here in terms of ensuring that the zoning map aligns with the general plan land use map and aligns with the metro specific plan maps. Otherwise, just some cleanup items that were identified by city staff have been incorporated, and this is just largely a consistency evaluation and implementation. Next. And here you can see where in the city we're looking at proposed changes to zoning, and it's really just 3 focus areas. The first being that southwest employment area, the BPRD that you see in the darker blue. To the west of that, you see kind of the pinks and purples, and that's the metro area. Then to the north, to the north is the California Circle area that you see as an area of change as well. The rest of the city, there aren't any changes proposed to zoning. Next slide. So zooming in on the BPRD and metro area, I just want to reiterate that in the general plan, every property that's identified as a BPRD property in the general plan, we're showing here as being part of the BPRD zone. So all these parcels will be under the new zoning of BPRD. And then to the east is the metro area. And similarly, every parcel that's included in the metro specific plan area is going to be, or is proposed to be rezoned to these new metro zones that are consistent with the specific plan. Next slide. And then looking up at the California Circle area, here we have rezoning of a variety of different zones to implement the general plan, including residential zoning, mixed use zoning, commercial, and open space. So this is that area south of Dixon and just east of 880. Next. And then you can see it pulling all together here in the citywide zoning map. So here you see the proposed changes together with the rest of the city is to be remain unchanged. And this draft map was prepared and available in January. So it's been available for a few months. We did have a draft earlier in the fall of last year, and city staff did offer office hours to be able to talk to anybody who had questions or concerns, because we know this is a lot of information. So the city's been having, I think, really good communication with the public and answering questions about this. Next slide. So lastly, I want to touch on focused outreach conducted as part of the new BPRD zone. And the genesis for this is that we held study sessions last fall. In October, we spoke to the city council about the draft standards for BPRD. And during that discussion, the council directed staff to conduct outreach to property owners, stakeholders in the Southwest employment area and get feedback on the proposed standards. Next slide. So the outreach that was done included focus group meetings. 3 focus group meetings were held with property owners and stakeholders. 13 folks attended those. There was also a separate meeting just with Cisco Systems. There was also a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. As we worked through, a lot of really high quality, great input and communication happened during those meetings. As we were working through revisions, the city continued with dialogue with those stakeholders as we were working through what revisions were going to work and be effective. And so with the draft that you have in your packet today, based on those conversations, we feel that we have a draft that does reflect the current market and the needs of high-tech industries and aligning with the city's policy direction. Next. So some of the key revisions that came out of that outreach include the warehousing and distribution, how that is allowed. So I mentioned this already, but the allowance for, I mean, this goes back to taking the word small out of the general plan and allowing, in terms of the descriptor for small warehousing, taking that out, and then allowing warehouses and warehousing facilities that are up to 150,000 square feet in this BPRD area by right, and requiring, and still allowing larger, but requiring a conditional use permit for that. And then revising definitions of some key uses, advanced manufacturing and R&D, compared to warehousing and distribution, to really distinguish storage of materials. And so, for example, for advanced manufacturing and research and development, there is no limit on the size of storage of materials or finished products for those uses. Those are primary employment generating uses, and the storage necessary to support that, there is no limit for that, versus the standalone passive storage for warehouse. We also added and defined other high-tech land uses like data centers. And then another significant change is relaxing or eliminating various development and design standards that we initially had included in our first draft of the BPRD standards based on these discussions that occurred. So there, many have been kind of removed or lessened in terms of kind of the strictness or mandates associated with those standards. Next. Okay, so then lastly, I want to talk about the environmental analysis briefly and get to the recommendation. Next slide. So for this project, an addendum was prepared under CEQA, under the California Environmental Quality Act, that is an addendum to 2 certified EIRs, those being the general plan EIR and the metro specific plan EIR. And what that addendum finds is that the impacts of this proposed project are consistent with those EIRs, that there aren't any substantial revisions required to those EIRs, and that there's no significant new information or changes in circumstances that would affect the validity or content within those EIRs. So based on the addendum's analysis, the finding is that there's no further environmental review analysis required, and the addendum is sufficient. Next. So with that, next slide for the recommendation. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission determine that the addendum is adequate in terms of analyzing the impacts under those EIRs, that the Commission determine that the EIR is in compliance with the CEQA guidelines, and that the Commission adopt the resolution in your packet recommending that the Council approve the general plan amendment and the zoning text and zoning map amendments that we have in your packet. So thank you very much for your time. With that, we would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Jennifer and Holly. Any questions from the commissioner or Holly or Jennifer?
I have a couple of questions, mainly for understanding. So what I understand is if the warehousing is accompanied by, in conjunction with advanced manufacturing or R&D, then there is no limit. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's a really a good question, an important point. So much of the discussion about the BPRD regulations was around warehousing and distribution, and how that's with given the current economy and the market, it's important to continue to allow. So one of the changes that we made was to actually include in the definitions of advanced manufacturing and research and development that those uses can include any amount of storage of materials or finished goods. And so that's not considered warehousing. It's just integrated with the primary use, no limits. They don't have to document what percentage of floor area is being used for any storage. So then warehousing and distribution, we created a new definition and distinguished that as being sort of a more, we call it standalone storage or more passive warehousing. And that's the use that would be subject to the 150 square foot threshold for allowed by right. So, but yes, that is correct.
So the reason for the distinction, what is the reason for the distinction between two types of warehousing? Is that because the city has different benefits in terms of sales tax or revenue, or what is the rationale for having two different types?
Yeah, I think initially when we were first talking this through after the study session with the city council in October, we received a lot of feedback from, and these are from people who build, developers who build spaces for, various high-tech uses and kind of light industrial uses, property owners, investors, architects, people who really, know the nuances of this. There was a lot of feedback that, that it was kind of a deal killer for advanced manufacturing or research and development to limit their ability to have warehousing because it's integral with what they do. So initially, and this may be too much detail, but because the general plan description for BPRD did talk about small warehouses, we had a much lower threshold, and we just heard, a great deal of feedback from many stakeholders that was unworkable. So we wanted to be more flexible in allowing warehousing, but we also wanted to recognize that what one might call warehousing or storage of goods is really inseparable. It's not, it's something that those types of businesses, advanced manufacturing or R&D, they need to store, either raw materials that they're using or products that they have produced, and that's just part of the business. So we just wanted to make sure that we drew a clear distinction between storage that supports those uses and storage that's truly just what you would think of as more traditional light industrial warehousing.
So, what was the real reason of having separate category? I mean, I'm not quite getting that. And there must be some justification for saying, why do you even need a second category? You could just allow unlimited warehousing no matter what.
Well, that gets into that gets into a kind of a larger set of considerations, but I suppose it is pretty integral to this conversation. We, initially, again, and this was coming straight out of the general plan, that the general plan was promoting the BPRD area as campus-like development, high-tech, employment-intensive, kind of leading-edge innovation sort of uses. That at the time the general plan was being prepared, this was pre-COVID, and during COVID, it was envisioned that there would be kind of integration of office and high-tech advanced manufacturing and those sorts of things. And it didn't really envision allowing traditional warehousing as kind of a light industrial use where you've got a huge floor plate and you've got heavy trucks and that kind of thing. It was just, I don't know how to describe it more clearly than that, but it was really just trying to create very much a high-tech employment-focused campus-like environment. As we got into the drafting of the zoning regulations, COVID happened, the market for office development basically disappeared. A lot of people are working from home. It's a different economic reality. It's a different market reality than I think it was when the general plan was being prepared. And so, and again, there was just extensive discussion about this, and we had a lot of very, very helpful comments from our stakeholders that, there is still a market for warehousing in this area, and that basically that the city needed to allow warehousing as a standalone use, even if not integrated with advanced manufacturing or R&D. Perhaps not in the long term, 20, 30 years, but for now, in order to have new investment, in order to, for developers and investors to minimize their risk and have assurance that if they build a building, it's going to be leasable, to a tenant, that we just needed to have the flexibility to allow warehouses. But I suppose getting to the more specific answer to your question, Commissioner, is that we still wanted to retain as much of the intent of BPRD as we could, recognizing that over time it will transition to more of kind of the higher tech uses and hopefully higher density development. But realistically for now, some warehousing is we need to allow it. And but we didn't want to do that without a limit. There was a lot of discussion about this, and I can have, I think our economic development director, Alex Andrade, is here. Also, our planning director can perhaps speak a little more to it if he would like to, but that's.
I think I'm understanding. Looks like you want to encourage value add businesses more for the city than to just have passive storage, because obviously city of Milpitas is a small city, the limited amount of space. So you want to use it for maximum. The word I want to use, value add businesses like R&D and advanced manufacturing, high tech businesses.
Yes, exactly.
That's another way of describing it.
That's perfect. Yeah, and thank you for filling that in for me. But yeah, it's the traditional warehousing. It doesn't bring in as much economic benefit to the city. It doesn't bring in as much tax revenue to the city. It doesn't create jobs in the way that advanced manufacturing or R&D does. And that's really what the BPRD zone was all about to start with. So it's just kind of a balancing act that we're trying to strike. Still encouraging and incentivizing the more value-added uses, as you put it, which is a very good way of putting it, but also allowing warehousing and being flexible with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Jay has something to say before we ask Alex and Ravi.
Really quickly, I think Commissioner Gupta, you summarized it very well. We wanted to be more flexible with those kinds of uses that are value adding versus the ones that wouldn't provide quite as much benefit to the city. So I think you put it quite well, and I'll pass it off to Director Alex Andrade.
Good evening, Alex Andrade, Director of Economic Development. I think that our planning director summed it up really well. Our consultants have done an excellent job. I'm going to preface this by saying I love all business that's here in Milpitas, of course, because I'm the Director of Economic Development. But what we started seeing years ago is that there were land uses that were that required a lot of land and a lot of space. What we've been looking at is ensuring that we have long-term fiscal sustainability by trying to bring in good quality jobs to the city, as well as good revenues to the city in order, obviously, to allow the city to continue with its operations and the community benefits that we provide. So what we were intending to do, let me just back up. We didn't intend to have different types of warehousing, but we learned from our community engagement with our businesses and as well as our property owners. And so this is a response to that, to get to that place where we can continue to move forward. The economy right now is very much in a state of flux. So we want to ensure that we have the ability for investors to come in, businesses to expand. We want to retain businesses as well, and then create new opportunities for investment. And so that's really what you're seeing here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I have questions. I'm not sure between Ollie or Jennifer, either one of you can help to clarify. What about existing uses that are not conforming to this new BPRD zoning? Because there are definitely a lot of hotels that's there right now. There are also offices that are not anything to do with advanced manufacturing, R&D. I understand that it's going to be allowed, right, until they plan to redevelop the site. But if they do, we do understand that these are also businesses. Hotels are critical to be a partner, especially if this is going to be a high employment site. There has to be hotels supporting it. So how does that come to play if perhaps one site wants to develop as a hotel?
Yes, thank you. So not just in the BPRD, but but anywhere citywide, when there is a zoning change, we have in our zoning code the chapter on non-conforming uses and buildings, and it's pretty standard. This is kind of standard practice for any city with land use regulation, that when a use or building becomes non-conforming because of a zoning change, it's generally allowed to continue indefinitely. But there are some limitations, so it can't expand. It can't increase the nonconformity, if you will. But as long as there's no lapse, as long as it doesn't cease the use doesn't cease on the site for a period of a year or more, it can just continue as a legal nonconforming use. And so in Milpitas, our legal nonconforming use regulations are fairly generous. I would say that there is, I believe, a provision even with a conditional use permit for an expansion under certain circumstances. I'd have to look at this exact wording, but those would be, they could continue to operate. They would be legal under those provisions of the code.
And then if other sites want to develop and not towards what is intended by BPRD, they would have to apply for an exception or zoning change. Is that correct?
So are you asking about, for example, a redevelopment with a use that's not permitted under the zoning?
Yeah, like example, I was giving the question specific to, like, say, a site wanted to be redeveloped as a hotel. Is that going to be requiring a zoning change?
It
Or is
would
that a
require,
permitted
I mean,
use?
Sue, if it's a use that's not permitted in the new zoning, yes, it would either just not be considered, or it would require a zoning change.
And then going back to the other site, which is the metro zoning, you did mention that you're removing the minimum parking requirement. I mean, there's basically no required parking anymore going forward. While, it's good intention to encourage, more transit oriented development. I'm concerned that the situation today with the limited stops that we have in terms of the bus route and in terms of even our micro transit is all not fully developed yet. I'm not that confident in that removal, that clause to remove it. Altogether.
The comment I understand is well taken. There's two things I would say. One is that, and Jennifer mentioned this in her presentation, but in the metro specific plan itself, it actually states that there's no minimum parking required. So that's just being translated directly from the specific plan to the zoning regulations. The other thing is that it's, even though the city doesn't have a minimum parking requirement, that doesn't mean a developer can't provide parking. They can. I mean, it would just be based on what if someone is building a mixed use building that has some retail, that has some residential units, it would be up to the developer to decide how much parking to provide. They can provide what the parking, well, there is a maximum in the code proposed for the metro zones, but I just want to be, that's a really important point, is that it doesn't mean that they can't build parking. It just means the city doesn't require them to build a certain minimum amount of parking.
And then lastly, there are a lot of public comments that was submitted surrounding zoning for private high school. I'm not sure if you can maybe help us understand that feedback. If with the new metro zoning, does it include, what was listed as, a lot of, I think we are getting at least 6-7 letters from the public here regarding Stratford High School.
Yeah. It was something like probably 20 emails.
Or maybe more.
Yeah. So there's an application that the city's currently reviewing for an expansion of the Stratford Schools campus, and it's in the future or proposed metro area. I believe the specific parcel is proposed to be rezoned to metro, BPRD-R metro. And the application's currently under review. Actually, the Mr. Stark, who's here this evening as the secretary, is reviewing that. I don't know if Avery, if you'd like to speak to it, but I mean, the fundamental answer is that the zoning change doesn't really affect the application under review, and that, the Planning Commission should consider the merits of that application individually, whereas this is a citywide zoning update. So the two things are really separate in terms of decisions that the Planning Commission would take. But I don't know if City Attorney or Mr. Stark, if you'd like to add anything to that.
I could speak to that a little bit. Yeah, I agree. I don't think this project is really related to the Stratford School because with or without the comprehensive zoning ordinance update, they would have not been complying with the specific plan requirement, namely the minimum floor area ratio, because the specific plan was trying to encourage more development because it's so close to the transit center and less reliance on automobiles, a more urban type of development. So even without this project, they would have had an issue with the floor area ratio. So yeah, I guess my comment would be that this project doesn't really change their entitlement because they can, even with the comprehensive zoning ordinance update, schools are allowed through a use permit. So it's not like we're prohibiting it, but we are saying that it still has to meet the standards that are in the specific plan. So to me, it's not necessarily salient to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Attorney, you have any?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Then we're coming back to the this topic of Stratford School. Why are the emails here with us right now?
It's hard to speak to exactly why, but I guess my take on that would be that it's an opportunity to make comments, to advocate for a development project. But yeah, I think there's the problem is there's still a challenge that they're facing with or without this project. And I'll pass it off to our city manager.
Good evening and welcome, City Manager Ned.
It's nice to be back with you, Chair Albana and members of the commission. I might shed a little bit of light on that. The city is currently negotiating a development agreement with the applicant for that project. And so they have gone to their parents, and it's just their right. It's fine. We expected that they would send letters. So they're sending letters to the Planning Commission and to the council because that project will eventually come before you for consideration under the rules that apply to that parcel and that project. But they know that there's some back and forth between the city and the developer on the project, and that's why they're exercising their right to have influence or exert some influence to persuade you, one way or the other to support the project. But we're working on it. It will come forward soon. It's not scheduled yet, but we're hoping to get it to you and to the Planning Commission in June.
And if I may just add, it is a site that would have a zoning change if this set of zoning changes is adopted. It would have a zoning change. So I think the letters are coming in now because the site is proposed to be rezoned, but that's kind of separate from the development application.
If I may, Chair Albana.
Sure.
The one legal comment that I'd make is that the Brown Act does contemplate us dealing with issues that are before the body at the time. When and if that project comes before a planning commission, that would be the appropriate time to address that one. I understand in the context of this meeting, public comments were submitted. They're submitted in regards to this particular zoning ordinance update. Having staff explain those distinctions certainly makes sense. I do want to make sure, though, that we remain focused on the current zoning ordinance update that's before the commission, rather than a project that may come before the commission in the future.
Thank you, City
Attorney. Thank you, Attorney.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was the reason I asked, but if it has any link, otherwise we can just read it and be prepared when it comes to us for rezoning or any other purpose. Another question I had is that when we were coming back to the zoning, this is what we're talking about, the advanced manufacturing. Let's say the advanced manufacturing, there is no data needed out of the, let's say they get 150,000, 200,000 square feet of space, and there is no data needed whether they will use 10,000 square feet as I understand, for advanced manufacturing. They might use the rest for warehousing. So do we have, is there any way we will be able to know how much they are going to use, or people can even use that for warehousing because we are restricting warehousing, other cities are not. When we had a meeting, I think we were considering about 200,000 square feet. And after that, there would have been a conditional use permit. Now I see it's 150. The cities of Fremont, San Jose, they don't have any they don't have any restrictions on how much it is to be used. But yes, I understand that we have to, at the same time, we have to get something which is revenue pulling. But 200,000 looked a decent figure to me at that time. And so I just want to get your comment on the first question also about the advanced manufacturing with no data on how much they are using for warehouse.
Thank you for the question. So if let's say that there was a site that was redeveloped, a new building was constructed, the applicant came into the city and said, this building will be occupied by an advanced manufacturing company, a company that's engaged in advanced manufacturing use. The city would say that that's a permitted use, and it would be, you know, they would be given clearance, they would be given their building permit, everything would proceed. No one, you know, there would be no questions asked about storage or anything like that. It would be a situation where an applicant came into the city, asking for, more of a, like I have described it before, more of a traditional warehousing and distribution. That would be the use that would be subject to the 150 square foot limit. But I do want to also emphasize that in other industrial zones, existing industrial zones, we have the MP industrial park, we have the M1 light industrial zone, and we have the M2 heavy industrial zone. And in all three of those areas, there would continue to be no restrictions on warehousing, no size limit. It just is a permitted use. And so it's not that we're eliminating, the ability to have larger warehousing in the city at all. It's just that we're trying in the BPRD area to focus on, and again, allowing some flexibility, allowing warehousing to a point, but also trying to incentivize and trying to focus the uses on these higher tech uses.
Yeah. With after COVID, the brick and mortar stores, they have been a little slow, but we want them, they are coming back. But the online purchases have increased, and especially the Gen Z, they just order things on the internet, and they want it right at 2 o'clock in the morning too. Whenever they want it, they order. So so we need a little bit of a flexibility. Well, we were proposing, I like the idea of the 200,000, at least for the warehousing. And if there is anything we can do about that, we should do about it. And also, when somebody comes from advanced manufacturing or any other data use, and they want to use it, we want to get some kind of assurance that they're not using a larger portion of it for warehousing, and so they're giving more employment and to the advanced manufacturing and other whatever use they are going to use. So, any comments on that? Thanks.
I apologize. I'm not sure I completely understand the question. You're asking about how does the city verify the way the space is being used?
Yes, when they come and they give an application, we got to make sure that they are not using it more for storage and less for the purpose. Like I said, that they can use it 10,000 square feet, and for the rest, they can use it if they get unlimited storage facility, they can use it for, and then we will know the whole purpose of getting the revenue will not be there.
Yeah. Well, and Director Lee, please chime in to help answer this question if you so desire. But in some cases when there's a reuse of an existing building, if it's an existing building with a new business or a new use coming in, they provide some information about this is what the business is, this is basically what the operations on the site would be, and planning staff kind of reviews that and reviews it against the way that the uses are defined in our code and says that fits under the category of advanced manufacturing, or that fits under the category of research and development. And, we don't probe so deeply into, asking them for verification of, exactly how the space is being used. But in other cases, if it's a redevelopment of a site, a new building, there may be a known occupant of that building, or there may not. It may be a developer that's constructing a spec building that will later be leased out to, future unknown tenants. And so, but again, it's when that determination is made at the time that a specific business proposes to operate on the site. And I don't know if perhaps Mr. Lee, if you have anything else to add to, I don't know if I'm answering the question thoroughly.
Yeah, it's a great question. There are different ranges of projects and improvements as these businesses move in. It could be a new building, it could be a tenant improvement, a renovation. But either way, in the end, they'll need to get an occupancy permit. Sometimes they'll even need to get a site development permit. So there will be some sort of a permit in almost every single case. And then that's where staff could either add conditions of approval, which we can, even if it's not a conditional use permit, we can still do it to other permits for how they operate, because they would have to operate as they're stating in their application. And then also do the occupancy permit. It's something that we can confirm as well. But in terms of like how much of the space is used for which particular use, I think one of the comments we heard was that having that flexibility was key, because some seasons a business may want to have greater portions dedicated to manufacturing, less towards warehouse, but in other, times they may want to change that ratio. So we do still want to be a bit flexible, but still just confirm that they are, the type of business and operating as they stated in the application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Holly, I wanted to clarify. It was nice that it was mentioned, the flexibility. So whenever somebody applies for not only a standalone, the city will be flexible, right? To see that it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to 150,000 square feet, depending on their need. Correct? We can also approve that with a conditional use permit, right?
That's correct. Yeah, if a use is proposed and it clearly fits under the definition of warehousing and distribution, and the new definition is provided in the zoning text amendments. It's in the Section 2 definition. So warehousing and distribution, we created it's sort of a revised definition for that use. So if a business wants to set up shop in the BPRD area, it clearly fits under that use definition, then it would be a compliance check. Either it's, the space is 150 square feet or less permitted, or if it's larger, then it would be subject to a conditional use permit. And it is, there's been so much discussion about warehousing, and the 150 square foot threshold is what we arrived at as city staff, that we, there were some stakeholders that were in support of that number. We've heard others that have requested a higher, so that point I would say is up for discussion this evening.
I see. But at least we will not turn away other people wanting more. At least we will encourage people to, it's, how will I say this? It's encouraging whoever comes in. It's not that we will turn them away. It depends, right? And that's what you said, the threshold is 150K.
Yes, that's correct. So
but I want that other people, stakeholders will be encouraged to come to Milpitas.
Yeah, that's correct. So under the current proposed zoning, there would be an avenue for larger warehouses with no upper threshold, but just it would be a conditional use permit, a discretionary decision on, and the purpose of that would be for staff to be able to review and say, just look at what would be, the circulation, for trucks or the other types of things that are associated with warehousing. It's not the requirement of a CUP for larger warehousing is it's not arbitrary or capricious. The purpose is so that we can be able to mitigate or minimize impacts that might be associated with large warehouses and to make sure that they're compatible with this district.
I don't know if you have the information. I just wanted to know what is the total like acreage of that area, the business park and the what do you call it? BPRD. What's the total area of that in the map, it's colored.
That is
How many acres would that be?
That is a great question. I believe I asked that question and got that number at some point. I will have to look for that. Give me a moment to look for that. I don't have it off the top of my head. Let me see if I can find it.
Because that's a pretty big area. And that will also encourage a lot of stakeholders concentrate on that area. It's fine.
I can search the computer for that. I don't know if I want to go on to other questions while I look.
Yes. Any other questions for Ollie or Jennifer?
I have that number.
Sure.
In our general plan, it outlines BPRD 488.26 acres. But some of that is also in the metro. Actually, no, actually it isn't. So yeah, it would be 488.26 acres.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Jay. Do you have any other questions and information? You have Jay. Well, at this time, maybe I'd like to open the public hearing. If there are any, do we have, Avery, any?
Yes, I have one speaker card for Nick Lamson.
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
I second that.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Awasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Galong,
Aye.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Albana.
Aye. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nick Lamson. I'm with McCarthy Development, a longtime landowner and commercial real estate developer in the city of Milpitas. Wanted to first say how much we appreciate all the work that the staff has put into this zoning ordinance update. I mean, all the outreach and changes that have been made. I mean, we understand how much work goes into that, and we really appreciate where we've gotten to. We think Milpitas has a lot to offer, and we're excited, the direction that it's heading. We've developed a lot here, and want to continue being a key member of the city and keep building more and bringing more investment into the city of Milpitas. One comment I did want to make was in relation to the new BPRD zoning and the allowable use for warehouse and distribution. Obviously, it's been a big topic of discussion. My suggestion would be to increase that allowable by right square footage number. I think 200,000 as a minimum is probably a good number to settle on. And the reason I say that is when, potential investors, and when I say investors, I turn to capital partners, lenders who are looking to finance these projects, when they're looking, where they want to place their money. And these are big projects that we're talking about. I mean, obviously, BPRD area is quite large. They look to local competition, and the more restrictive the zoning code is, the more likely that they'll go to local competition like Fremont, San Jose, who don't necessarily have these same restrictions. I think upping the allowable use for warehouse would really go a long way. A lot of the tenants who are looking to lease these buildings need large footprints to operate their businesses. And I think, just the key here is flexibility. That's going to drive investors here. That's going to drive lenders here. And it'll really position Milpitas to take advantage of, new speculative development and bring in these high-tech users who, could go elsewhere, but I think Milpitas is a good area to offer, what they're looking for. Thank you.
Sorry for clarification. You do have 1 minute remaining. It was meant to be 3.
That's all I have to say. That was it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. No others? Avery?
No other speaking cards.
All right, do I get a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta.
Aye.
Commissioner Wasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Galong, Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Abana.
Aye. Thank you. Do we deliberate anything? Comments among ourselves before we do a motion?
Yeah, I just have a question for the gentleman. Yeah.
Commissioner
Was this a presentation or a public hearing item which you just had your views on? Because I have a question for you, if you can, please. So we can't. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. We had closed the comments. We just have to comment among ourselves. Or if not, we get a motion to.
I have a question for, I don't know, it might be Jay. I don't know if you know the answer, but just to clarify the by right versus conditional use, for the difference between 150,000 square feet and 200.
To clarify, like the difference that it would have on like impact wise, or?
Yeah, because don't both of them are still going to require a city permit, right, to develop?
I see. So if you're under the threshold and you're building a new building, you still need a site development permit that requires typically planning commission approval. The difference is like it's what you're looking at, the topic. So for a site development permit, you're really focusing on the physical development, whereas a conditional use permit, you're focusing a little bit more on the use, the operations. So yeah, even a project, whether it's over the threshold or under, if it's a new building, it would need a site development permit, just a different permit.
Are we discussing that topic still, even though it's
Yes.
closed?
Comments among ourselves.
Comments? Yeah, I think we should discuss it and understand, because there are a total of 488 acres in that area. And I don't know how many acres are really available for warehousing use or additional R&D or advanced manufacturing. How much area is already built? How much is left? If we're not left with that much acreage, then it's a moot issue. I mean, it's 150,000 versus 200,000. I don't know if it's, we may not even have that much space available. That's the question I want to understand.
I would say you're correct that there's not a lot of completely vacant sites in the area, but this is an area that's sort of ripe for redevelopment, a demolition of an existing structure and a complete redevelopment of the site. The zoning hopefully will actually help to encourage that, to bring in new investment and new development. Yeah, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Well, if I could add, and also for traditional manufacturing, as a general plan designation, there's 661 acres. So just to kind of give some comparison between how much is for our regular industrial zoning versus a BPRD, it's about 50% higher than our BPRD.
If it would be helpful, we could bring up the slide again that shows the full citywide existing and new proposed, the zoning map. I can't read that on my screen so small, but I think it's the gray, I'm sorry, not this slide, but the one that shows this slide. I believe it's the gray areas that are the industrially zoned areas that would have, warehousing would be permitted with no restrictions on size. I can't read the print on my screen, but I think those are the existing industrial zones.
Go ahead,
I'm
City
supposed to
Manager.
be here and be quiet, just sit and observe, but I just want to give a little bit of historic context to where this BPRD came from, the idea. And as Director Lee mentioned, this really goes back to the general plan, which was developed. It was being developed when I arrived in Milpitas 6 years ago. So it's been going on for 8 years. And we go all the way back. One of the themes of the general plan was to like on this map, you see all the yellow areas, which are residential. And the general plan said, let's protect those areas. Those are settled neighborhoods, residential development. So it's not really part of this conversation. So that's on the residential side. We'll talk about that probably on phase 2 of the zoning ordinance. But for this phase, the general plan said, well, where do we think there are opportunities for new development? And particularly, as Economic Development Director Andrade said, the city is always interested in having a balance and being economically, fiscally sustainable and providing both preserving areas for jobs. So if you look at this map, those opportunities are really where in the gray and what's shown here in dark blue areas. So the gray right in the middle of the city, of course, is the area south of here of City Hall, which is our M2 area, industrial land. It's heavy industrial. Historically, the railroad was there and there's large buildings. So kind of on a related note, several years ago, the city council took action to protect that area. It strengthened the zoning ordinance. There were changes that were made so that uses that were not compatible with heavy industrial development would not move into that area, because when it does, it undermines the integrity of an industrial area. And then even though you have industrial zoning there, industrial uses don't want to move into the area. So we address that through some ad hoc zoning amendments. I think, Holly, did you work on those? I think that's how Holly came to.
That was the genesis of my involvement with the city of Milpitas was, those zoning.
Back to that history as well. Yeah, that's how Holly came. And she did so well on some of these ad hoc zoning changes that we said, oh, well, when we get to the zoning ordinance update, let's have Holly work as our in-house consultant on this particular project. So BPRD, if you look at this map, you have the very large area that we talked about. How many acres was that, Jay? Was it 300? Four. Yeah, 480. And then over in what's we now call the metro area to my right, that other area is also BPRD. And that was specifically an area identified in the general plan for future employment development. So you kind of have these two different areas. They're both BPRD. And as we've gone through the process, there were some areas of BPRD in the metro area that we thought, well, we could have a few housing units there too. So you might have an office building, research and development, but if it was appropriate, you might have a few. So that's one flavor. But you zero in on that very large area over there, which from it comes from the general plan. That's our southwest employment area, and it was meant to be something different. And the biggest change there, and this was done to as an incentive for redevelopment of the area, is currently the zoning limits the FAR, the floor area ratio. It was 0.5, I think, is where it was now. It's either 1.0 or 0.5, so very low. And the general plan said, oh, well, when you get around to redoing the zoning in this area and you create a BPRD zone, let's increase that to 2.0. So it significantly increases the development potential of the site. And so what we're really doing here by making these zoning adjustments is creating opportunity for redevelopment of those sites. And a lot of the existing buildings that are there are, well, they're not, I wouldn't call them obsolete, but some of them are 20, 30 years old. And so as the property owners want to redevelop those, this zone change primarily gives an opportunity to have more development there. So 0.5 versus, increased all the way up to 2.0 on the floor area ratio. And so that sounded like a really good idea. And then as we're going along with the zoning, this issue came up with how do you address the warehousing? And so as you heard, we have unlimited ability if somebody wants to build a warehousing center in that gray area in the middle of the city. It's even in McCarthy Ranch, you have seen in recent years, Amazon and others have built very large distribution centers there. But the idea was to have this BPRD area in the Southwest employment area reserved for employment uses. And that's why staff, we went back and forth a lot, had a lot of conversations. Is it 50,000? Is it 100,000, 150? Is it 200,000? But to keep the area a little bit unique from the other areas where it's unlimited, this area was limited. That's why it came down to 150,000. Hopefully that will give you a little bit of historical context on where this idea of a BPRD and how it was different from the other industrial areas of the city came about.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
What?
Oh, City Manager, I have a question. Or maybe even Holly can answer. So in looking at this threshold of like the 100,000, 150,000 and so on, what's the competitive benchmark? Because I think one of the public comment mentioned about being competitive and saying that San Jose doesn't have one, Fremont doesn't have one. Do we know area-wise, regionally, how has, for example, Mountain View and Palo Alto has been very successful in developing their business parks. What has been the benchmark from the area?
I guess one way to answer that is I'd say, well, we remain competitive because we do have areas of the city that are zoned where there is no limit on the size of a warehouse. It just happens that in this area, again, we wanted to have it a little unique or differentiated from the heavy industrial areas where this would be more of an employment area. It would attract a different type of land development. That's why it was limited down to 150. Holly, you might have a little more to say about that. I know we have. I wasn't involved in a lot of the conversations, but I know a lot of discussions have gone around what's the right number. Your exact question: what's the right number that's competitive for the city? Because we definitely want to remain competitive in the market.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a detailed list of what zoning districts in nearby cities allow in terms of warehousing, but I do. We had a lot of specific conversations about warehousing with stakeholders following those focus groups. And I do recall it's a little more helpful, I think, as Mr. Thomas is suggesting, to talk about specific zoning districts rather than just generally for Milpitas, because we do have areas where there's no restrictions on warehousing. In other cities, in similar zoning districts that are focused on similar high-tech uses, the city of Fremont has 150,000 square foot warehouse limit, I suppose, by right, in not citywide, but in zoning districts that are focused on high-tech uses. So, that was, I think, one reason why we felt comfortable with that number. But again, we've heard. You have in your packet in the, I believe it's attachment E in the public comments, there are some comments from other individuals suggesting a higher threshold. So that really is still very much the seems to be the key point about this zone.
If I may add, some stakeholders have mentioned that the 150,000 is consistent and competitive and they're okay with it. Some have mentioned that it's too low. So there's just different opinions out there. But we have heard, we didn't just think of 150 out of nowhere, but we have heard from other stakeholders that was a workable number.
Yeah, I appreciate, especially when Holly, you mentioned that for similar, advanced manufacturing directed zoning in Fremont is using the same number. That's a very comforting information.
Will it make a very big difference or a negative impact if we just basically set it at 200,000? Or here's another question is, if you feel that it's a balanced decision for the benefit of the city, then we can stick with a threshold of 150,000. But I'm sure you put all your minds into it. Because definitely we want to remain competitive, but at the same time, we want to balance what Milpitas is, because we can't compare with other cities. Milpitas is Milpitas. We are ourselves, and we are also limited in land, unlike the big other cities. So we have to stand for what we believe is basically what is good. And as what you said, there's unlimited other areas in the gray areas, right?
Yeah. I think that's really pinpointing the crux of the issue. And if I could ask either Mr. Andrade, Mr. Lee, or Mr. Thomas, I mean, these are, sort of policy decisions I think that the city management has deliberated on. And I would like to have one of you respond to that question, if you would, in terms of increasing the threshold and what your take is on that.
Maybe I could start, and Director Andrade could add, or City Manager Ned Thomas as well. I think as of right now, based off of what we heard, just overall, we are comfortable with the 150,000, but we understand other comments as well. Yeah, or else, perhaps we would have changed it prior to the meeting, but it's what the public review process is for. So, yeah, I'll pass it to anyone else who wants to make a comment, or what I said is okay.
Chair, can I say something? Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, I understand. I support my other fellow commissioners about the 150 to 200. If other cities does accept the 200, if majority of this commission recommend from 150 to 200, support that. That gonna make it happen, or do we need to vote for that from 150 to 200?
Yeah, well, the threshold is 150. As I said, there's not going to be, they have spent time trashing it out. And also with 200, we don't have to compare to other cities. But at the same time, as long as we remain competitive and we encourage stakeholders to come into to Milpitas. So
Can we try it? If it doesn't work, it can go back to 150.
no, that's what's on the table right now, 150.
Table right now.
Any comment, Alex?
I just checked in with City Manager Ned Thomas, and clearly we're talking a difference of 50,000 square feet, and the market is changing and continues to be in flux, as we were saying earlier. Perhaps something we can consider, and you are the decision-making body, we'll be making a recommendation to the City Council. If you were to go with the larger square footage, perhaps there's a way for staff to come back a couple of years from now. We'll see how the market responds, whether it was something that was needed at the time. What we've heard, and Planning Director Jay Lee indicated, flexibility is key. We have been hearing that for a long time, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic. And we're still seeing, again, changes. Businesses need as much assistance as they can, and we're obviously looking for investment. So something for you to perhaps consider is if you want to go with the larger square footage, staff can come back and report out on how the market responds, how investors respond, and perhaps there's an opportunity to make an adjustment. Then I'll look to Planning Director Jay Lee on thoughts.
Yeah, and right now, what's the draft before you says 150,000 square feet, but if this commission would like to, they could also recommend council to consider 200,000 square feet as well. So making a motion for recommendation for approval, but with the recommendation that the council consider a larger threshold. That's within the commission's right.
I have the reason for when I heard the public comment from one of the stakeholders, and listening to all my colleagues, my chair, and one of the things which is one of the in the public comment, the stakeholder said that this 50,000 square feet increasing it to 200,000. 150,000 is not bringing in the more lenders or people that don't want to invest. They want to go elsewhere. So as Commissioner Alex said, increasing a little bit in size and to get all those tidbit problems instead of increasing with a conditional use permit, we could bring in all the businesses here instead of them going to other places. So that's just a comment I wanted to.
However, do we have enough data to justify to go from 150 to 200? I think we need to investigate more because maybe 200 is too low, or, we don't know, right? I mean, I think we should study and somebody maybe in the planning department get more data and comparative situation and then recommend to the city council accordingly. Because I don't think we're in a position to say 200 is good enough, but what's the justification for 200 versus 250 or 300? I mean, there is no, it seems like there's no data to support it.
Yeah, if I could add, I think the difficulty for staff is that we are not experts in knowing what the right threshold is. So we very much rely on our stakeholders, and the numbers that we've been hearing are 150,000 or 200,000. So I don't know how much more research that we as staff could do, because we're really relying in many ways on our stakeholders. The research that we could really do is look at what other cities are doing. We could do that a little more, but I would suggest you kind of have the information, from our stakeholders already. We've done a lot of outreach already, and I think we just in the end have to make a decision between those two numbers, because that's all we've been hearing so far. If you ask any developer, which makes total sense, I think the ideal scenario would be to be maximally flexible, but we have competing interests. So I think 150 or 200K is probably the best options to think about for tonight.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I really appreciate that we already have a process in place, because I remember when I first heard the initial briefing, it was not even a consideration, right? The large warehouse usage was not even permitted. And now it is conditional use. It can be done. So there is a lot of flexibility already built into the process. And that threshold of 150 versus 200,000 seems to be marginal. I mean, is it really going to turn someone away from developing something just because of 50,000 square feet difference? Because ultimately, based on the way that it was described earlier when Commissioner Calkins asked a question, the process is the same, and they still have to come to Planning Commission to request for site development permit, and then conditional use permit is just on top of it in the same process. That doesn't seem like too big of a burden to go through the conditional use permit process. At least to me, I think it's a good balance what we have right now on the table.
One last thing to add to that is, just as it was pointed out, there's a lot of other areas in the city, if they want bigger warehousing space, it's available, just in a different area.
Yes, and as Holly and Jennifer had explained, there is still flexibility. And if somebody's coming in, then just give them a conditional use permit. And we want to make sure that we encourage stakeholders, more stakeholders come. So 150,000, I think is fair with a conditional use permit if they go over 150,000 square feet. Do I get any motion? Approve?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-017, recommending that the City Council approve General Plan Amendment number GP24-0002 and zoning text and zoning map amendment number ZA24-0002.
I apologize for interrupting, but if I could add, we were advised that given the minor correction that Jennifer noted in her presentation about the text of the BPRD zone regulations, and the term small warehouses still appears in the description of the BPRD zone. So we would remove that before we take the zoning amendments to city council. So if you agree with that, if that could also be included in your recommendation to council, we will make sure that gets handled.
And adding those minor adjustments that were just announced. Yeah, included.
Is that good enough, Jenny? Ollie? I second. All in favor? Roll call.
Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Wasti.
It'll be an aye, but can I add that it should be increased from 150 to 200? Is this the right time to add?
No, not currently. So amendments, the motion that's currently does not have that amendment as part of it. The vote would be on the motion as currently stated.
It's an aye for me.
So there's another commissioner stating.
What is your vote, Commissioner Awasti?
Aye.
Okay.
Commissioner Galong,
Okay, aye.
Vice Chair Medina Ashby,
Aye.
Chair Albana.
Aye. Thank you so much, Avery. Our next agenda item is new business. Since we don't have any new business, let me read this declaration. Any person aggrieved by the final decision of any board, commission, or department of the head of the city of Milpitas may appeal to the decision to the city council by filing the written notice of the appeal with the city clerk within 12 calendar days of the date of said decision and paying the required fee. This time limit shall be strictly enforced. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Second. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Right. This meeting's adjourned.
The last one.